I'm Ashley Riddell. Welcome to another Tutorialbucket tutorial. Well, take a look at this. Here's a problem I'm sure we've all seen far too many times. Skin tones that have got far too much colour cast or colour saturation. How do we correct these sort of problems? Well, we've got a variety of tools that we can employ for this, and I'm going to show you 3 techniques which I think are probably the easiest and quickest. There are far more advanced techniques, but these are the bread and butter ones that'll fix most of your problems. Okay, first of all, basic one, bread and butter technique, should be understood by every Photoshop user in the world. It is to add a levels adjustment layer. I'll just click on my new adjustment layer button and choose a levels adjustment layer. And it brings up the adjustment palette. Now this has a little button on it called auto, and you can try auto. Auto may well fix the problem for you. If you hit the auto button, you might just get an acceptable fix. Yeah, it's not bad, but I think we can do better than that. So we'll just undo that. Okay, so we're going to do this manually. Now the trick to understanding why this image has a problem is to look at the color channels. You have a histogram, which is a graph showing the dark pixels to light pixels, and it shows you there's a lot of dark pixels and there's some light pixels and there's some mid-tone pixels in between. But we're going to go and look at the individual color channels. Now the red color channel, as you would expect, good spread of dark and light pixels all the way through because there's a lot of red in the image. Green channel, not so good. There's plenty of green ones in the darker end and the mid-tone end, but there's no light coloured green pixels in the image at all. And that's a bit of a problem. Try the blue channel. Yikes, that's a real problem. There are very few blue pixels, and the combination of the green and blue channel are causing the problem for this image. It's not enough balance between the different colour histograms. The fix. This classic method is to simply grab your light pixel slider where there are no blue pixels at all, and we drag it over until it touches the edge of the existing histogram. So in other words, we're getting rid of all of the dead space in the blue spectrum, and we're giving a lot more blue in the image. This will generally begin to fix the problem quite noticeably. Go to the green channel. Do the same thing. Drag it over so it touches the edge of the histogram. It may correct the problem completely simply by doing those 2 drags, but more often than not it will still have some problems. In this case it's looking a little bit too yellow, so I'm going to go back to the blue channel and go to the mid-tone grey slider here and just fiddle with that just a little bit. Drag it off to the left a little bit, not too much, and you can just balance out that yellow so it's a little bit more toned down. If it doesn't quite spin your wheels the way you'd like, go back to the green channel again, go to its grey mid-tone slider and then fiddle with it in here. And by fiddling with those 2, the green and blue mid-tone sliders, you should then be able to balance out the colour and get the colour tone and setting that you actually want for the image. As I said, this is a classic. You should all know how to do this one, and if not, go to it. Do a few images and get used to it. Okay, next method for making our colour correction. I'm just going to get rid of these adjustments I've made here. I'll just turn off my adjustment layer so we restore the original colour toned image, and we'll try the next type of fix. This one also requires an adjustment layer, and this one is called a colour balance layer. Now the colour balance layer will give you the full selection of red, green, blue, cyan, magenta and yellow balancing tones for shadows, midtones and highlights. This is quite an advanced tool and can be a little bit scary to use the first couple of times, but stick with it. It does a pretty good job at making your corrections once you understand how the thing fits together. Now the first thing to adjust is the midtones. Midtones is by far it's the biggest area that's going to make a change. Shadows and highlights, they're more fine-tuning functions for this. It's midtones that's going to make the big fix. Okay, too much orange, we're looking at the opposites here. So if there's too much red, too much yellow, that means you want more of the opposites. So you want more cyan and you want more blue. Pull them over and you get a pretty good correction almost on its own. Now, this is not a coincidence in the way I pull these across. See how they form a diagonal, like a ramp. This is generally the way you need to do this to get it to be fixed. They need to maintain a kind of a curve line. If you know a little bit about the curves tool, this is roughly what you're doing, is you're applying a color curve. It's not always absolutely true, but I find it does hold true in a lot of situations. So keep them in there, and you'll correct to a very large degree your colour problems in this way. And we just drag that little bit of red over here, maybe pull the cyan back a little bit more, and that's not bad for the midtones. Now you need to go for the highlights, and for the highlights, similar technique, almost the same, but you'll find it won't quite need it to the same amount. And you also need to remember that because you're dealing with highlights, you may need to change the way you approach it, but the rule will be pretty much the same, that it's kind of like a ramp or a curve that's going to stay in a diagonal. And finally, the shadows. The shadows in this case mightn't need very much at all, really. I'll just nudge this over just a tiny bit. Yeah, it's next to nothing really. It's not very much to make the change. But that makes a very good colour correction as well. It's a very powerful tool and takes a little bit of work to get this to do the job as you want. Now, after watching this, you're probably going to think, I'll never remember how to do all of those different adjustments for shadows, midtones and highlights. So I'm going to show you another tool which uses exactly the same functions and the same tool to get the job done, but it does it all with pretty pictures. It's a thing called the Variations tool. Before we dive in with the Variations tool, once again I'll close off the adjustment layer that I've used here for my colour balance. Just show you a before and after. It really does do a pretty good job. Okay, and I need to make a copy of our original image. The Variations tool is a destructive one. It's going to actually change the pixels on the image, so I'll just quickly drag a copy of it up. And we're ready to roll. You'll find the adjustments for Variations under the Image, Adjustments, Variations menu. That's Image, Adjustments, Variations. And it's going to pop open an enormous window. I can't quite squeeze the entire screen into my camera here, but it's enough so we can see how it all works. This essentially is the same tool as the color balance tool. As you can see, it's got shadows, midtones, highlights, and saturation. Instead of playing around with a slider for the balance, we have a set of thumbnail images which show us the original and what it would like to try and do. It will take a stab at trying to correct the image for you at the start, so it may well come very close to getting it right, but more often than not you really do have to get in there and make your adjustments yourself. So how does it all work? Well, the simplest way is it shows a more green, more magenta, more yellow, more blue, more cyan, more red. In other words, it's the same as the sliders in color balance, but showing you what would happen if you choose this variation. The slider that we do have up here is called Fine and Coarse. It's set to a midway setting, and if you adjust it down, the changes for selecting more green, more magenta, etc. is less. So it's a fine tuning tool. The lower that setting is, the lower the amount of change that comes through. Now, I'd recommend that you start with a mid setting and see which direction you really need to be going in. Is it more towards the cyans and blues, which looks pretty much like what we want to do? So then adjust down the setting from midway to something a little bit more fine, until you get something that's close to what you want to have. And I think that's not too bad. So I think first of all I want a bit more blue, and I'll just adjust it down so it's a little bit more fine. And maybe that was a bit too much blue, so maybe a bit more yellow, and maybe a little bit of cyan. And that's the midtones done. That's very quick and very painless. So we'll now go over to our highlights. Same technique, it's exactly the same, there is absolutely no difference here. You simply drag up your slider to a midway setting between fine and coarse and just look at the highlights. Which colour looks best in this particular case? I'm thinking a little bit more cyan is probably the go here, and maybe a little bit more again. Yeah, I think that's not too bad in itself. Then I'll go to shadows. Have a look at the shadows. Are the shadows okay? Do they need more blue, more magenta, more red? I think maybe blue, somewhere between blue and cyan, so I'll go to a lower setting. And maybe a lower setting again. Yep, I think I want a bit more blue. And a bit more cyan. Now there's also on the right hand side an option to make it lighter or darker. I'll just pull my camera down here so you can see that. It's a darker setting and a lighter setting. So you can also adjust the lightness and contrast of the image to a degree. Be careful with that one. I think you're better served by using your normal light adjustment tools like levels and curves for this, but hey, knock yourself out and try it and see how it works out for you. I'll just put my camera back. If we turn on this option here, show clipping, this is actually quite useful sometimes. It will give you an idea of when the colour changes that you're making might be going too far. And more in the case, you'll find this if I go to the highlights, it might show up if I go too far in one direction. So I go for more red. I'll just increase the coarseness of this. I'll go for a bit more red again. Yep, you start to get this effect. This means that the colour is going to get blown out in the image, that it's not the correct level of colour. So it's a nice little hint to say it's not this way to go, buddy. Go the opposite ways. So I'll just put back the more cyan, more cyan, more cyan, maybe a bit less cyan. Just adjust it down so it's a little bit finer, a little bit more red, and I'll say I'm happy. I like this. This is not bad. We say okay. And there's the fix. That does a pretty good job, really. Of course, you'll want to go in there and make some fine adjustments, but the Variations tool is a great way of getting the main bulk of the work out of the way so you can just go in and tweak the thing to your heart's content. In a future tutorial, we'll be having a look at the Curves tool for making colour corrections, because that really is the king of all colour correction tools. It's the most advanced and there's a lot of ground to cover. So until then, bye-bye.